I'm gonna let him introduce himself, man. I just ran into him. I thought he was a very interesting guy, and you seem very comfortable too.
Oh yes.
So, what's your name and where you from? And
okay, well, the name I go by is Chrissy or Christine. My given name is Christopher, but I prefer gender neutral or feminine pronouns. I'm gender fluid.
Okay. What does that mean? Can you tell me what that means?
Basically, it means, well, we've come to realize now that gender is not the same thing as your bodily sex. Most people,
yes, sir.
Most people's psychological internal gender matches their physical sex, but in my case, my internal gender does not match my physical sex. Physically, anatomically, my sex is male, but internally I have a lot of feminine energy. I'm much more, I'm gender fluid. And we realize now that gender is actually a social construct. It started when, certain social roles were given to the women, certain social roles were given to the men, and that developed over time into these very specific roles identified with gender.
Right.
But the thing is, those culturally assigned roles are not identical to the sex to which they were assigned.
Yes, sir.
So there are some people that don't fit the role given to men or don't fit the role given to women. And I think like a woman. I relate much more to the female, and I was never comfortable with myself until I realized that. And when I started dressing this way and expressing myself in a way, I came to love myself. My whole mindset changed. The depression I spent my whole life under lifted.
Sir. Now, should I refer to you? I'm sorry. Should I refer to you as sir, ma'am?
Oh, actually,
or
I'm not really hung about pronouns. Some people are very picky about it, but I consider myself androgynous, so I acknowledge the fact that I have both male and female. I tend to lean towards feminine, so I kind of prefer.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
okay,
I prefer
yes,
that.
Yes, ma'am.
But I don't take offense because I accept these are both part of me. I'm not I'm not a fully transgender person. Someone like that they don't feel any identity with their body at all.
Right.
I have some masculine energy.
Right.
I'm more like a yin and yang of male and female. I just lean more female.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, actually, I had a really good friend of mine that kind of just helped me see some things. They were kind of red flags that I managed to not notice myself. They pointed out all these different ways.
Right.
Well, look at this, look at this, look at this. I was interested in fingernail polish and makeup, and my tastes were just more feminine. My way of thinking was more feminine. I didn't. I tended to prefer the company of women to men.
Right.
Just everything about me, other than my actual physical body, was very feminine.
Right.
And then when she talked to me about that, because she's much more informed about those kind of things, everything just kind of clicked and fell into place for me, and that was a real turning point for me in my whole life. I mean, so many things have been wrong my whole life changed. Okay. I spent most of my life in depression, self-loathing, all that kind of stuff, low self-confidence, low self-esteem, and when that happened, everything flipped. Okay. And I found that I'm very comfortable dressing this way. I like to dress this way, and this is a role I know how to do. It's very natural to me, whereas being a man was never comfortable to me. Right.
Did you grow? Can you give me a little bit about how you grew up and where you grew up?
I grew up. I was born in Oklahoma, but I spent most of my life here in Arkansas because my dad was a chemist, and we moved here to work so he could work at the arsenal.
Okay.
So I grew up. Most of my life was here in Arkansas. I grew up in very, very conservative, strict Christian.
Wow.
Church of Christ.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you believe the Bible?
Symbolically. I'm a Buddhist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. What is their belief system? What happens
there's a lot of variety, but generally speaking, it's except for certain sects of Buddhism. Buddhism is not a religion that deals specifically with an idea of God.
Okay.
Per se, it's about enlightenment. We all partake in the same consciousness, and we do believe in reincarnation.
Okay.
We believe we revisit.
Okay.
Come back, things like that. But it's the principles, when you get past the surface theology of the deities and things like that, the principles are very similar to Christianity, because it's about letting go, not being attached to material reality, rooting yourself in spiritual truth, finding contentment regardless of your circumstances. You find a lot of parallels between what Jesus taught, what Paul taught, and with what Buddha taught. They just use different terms, because different cultures are inevitably going to express the same ideas through different ways.
What would you say, because you just said something about Jesus. Jesus said this, he says, I'm the way and I'm the truth and I'm the life. Mm-hmm. And he says, nobody gets through the Father unless they come through me. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't take the Bible in a literal sense. I don't believe that it's word for word. I see the Bible more as not so much as God reaching out to man as men reaching out to God. I do see it as a spiritual text, but I don't think it's any more valid than the Bhagavad Gita, which is a Hindu scripture, or the Dhammapada, which is one of the Buddhist scriptures.
Yes, ma'am.
I think, in Buddhism, your central figure is Buddha. And he was a prophet. He wasn't a god. He was just a prophet. Mm-hmm. But he's the central figure, and so he's going to sort of be the mouthpiece for the philosophy in that religion. In Christianity, you've got Jesus as the central figure, but they're both teaching the same things. What Jesus was teaching was, salvation was about Christ consciousness. It wasn't really about us, being miserable little sinners that were, weak and all this kind of stuff. I mean, none of us are perfect, but what Christ was teaching was that we all have the same thing within us that he had in him. There's a passage where it says that we are going to be co-heirs. He refers to us as brothers and sisters.
Right.
That implies peer. That implies equal.
That's right.
To me, Jesus was not the only person who was enlightened. He was simply, in that mythology, he was the first. And the path, the way he was showing was not specifically him. Even he said it wasn't him, it was the Father. He was the presenter of a way that was bigger than him. He, in that, was the representative of the path of enlightenment. What Buddhism and Hinduism call enlightenment is the same thing, and just in Christian terms, they put it in terms of salvation.
Okay.
Rescue from sin. But sin is inevitability. All that is imperfection. It's not something we should beat ourselves up about. It can't be escaped.
Right.
Part of it is accepting our imperfection. Part of grace is forgiving ourselves. That's the hardest thing, is forgiving ourselves.
You seem like a very sharp lady.
Thank you.
All right?
Percy, but that's fine.
And so Percy.
Yeah, I don't take offense. I really don't.
Can I give you the central snapshot of the central message of the Bible real quick? And the central message of the Bible is God became a man, right? And then here's the reason why he became a man, all right? And so have you ever heard of the moral law, the 10 Commandments?
Oh yeah, I've read the Bible a number of times. I'm actually an amateur religion scholar myself. I've studied the Bible thoroughly. I've studied a little bit of New Testament Greek.
Oh wow,
things like that.
Cool.
So I'm fairly well versed in the scriptures.
So I'll give you the good person test, right? Well, it's like a mirror, all right? If I go look in the mirror, it shows me what I look like. The 10 Commandments is a mirror to the soul. Okay. It shows you what a person looks like on the inside, and most people don't really know what they look like on the inside. I know we talked about a little bit of that. But let me just measure you based on the commandments to see where you measure up based on standard of what the Bible says. Not judge you anyway, man.
No, I understand.
I'm right there, imperfected, just like you said. So here's question number one, man. How many lies have you told in your lifetime? What'd you say?
I have no idea.
No
one's perfectly honest.
Absolutely. So what do you call a person that tell lies?
What do you call a person that tell lies? Well, technically, linguistically, a liar, but I think the fact that sometimes a lie is better than truth. I mean, if someone asks you, does my ass look fat in this jeans, are you going to tell them the truth? Or is the truly compassionate, proper thing to do to lie? So it's not just the thing itself. You have to look past it. What is the motivation? What's the reason? I believe it's a certain degree of subjective morality. Sometimes a lie is the right thing, sometimes it's not. It depends on what will cause greater harm in the long run, and which will cause greater good in the long run. So to a certain degree, I'm a pragmatist as well.
Yeah. In our heart, we know our conscience says what, but that ain't right? And so we know morality is. Would you say that morality comes from our own selves, or would you say it comes from a higher power? What would you say?
I think morality is a combination of cultural mores. I mean, some cultures have things they consider very moral that we would be completely appalled at and consider to be immoral. There's a lot of subjectivity to that. I think there is an internal component, because I do think that, as a more evolved species like us, we have greater awareness, and part of that is we're capable of understanding, that others experience pain. We're capable of seeing through others. So there's a certain amount of innate, I think, compassion and sympathy. And I also said I believe in reincarnation, so I think souls that are older, been around longer, have learned these things.
Okay, all right.
And again, I do believe that there's an external reality that's bigger than us, but I don't believe in it in a conventional God sense.
Okay.
I think of God more as a symbolic term for something bigger. I think religious texts and religions are. I think mythologies exist because these are concepts that are ultimately beyond words, and so we can't really describe them like you would describe a mathematical process or a scientific process. So we describe them with symbols and stories, and it's up to us to look deeper than the words themselves and find a hidden meaning and not get hung up on the literal surface.
Would you say would you say you're atheist or more of an agnostic?
Agnostic.
Okay. And so here's a scientific term I like to throw at people. You believe in a scientific impossibility that nothing created everything.
I don't know. That's part of being agnostic, is I'll acknowledge there's a lot of questions that I don't have answers for, but I'm okay with it.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, I don't insist on having to have the answers to everything. Like I said, I think all of our spirits are connected. I think there is ultimately one cosmic soul that we all participate in.
Right.
I don't think your brain creates consciousness or my brain creates consciousness. I think there is consciousness through everything, and I think that's the source of reality as well. In quantum physics, we're learning that a lot of times a thing, like for example, an electron is not a little dot orbiting an atom. An electron is a field of probability until it's observed. And at that point, it goes from being infinite probabilities to where it might be to picking one place where it actually is.
Wow.
So physical reality doesn't even collapse into existence until it's observed. So I think this field of consciousness, which I think that's what's being referred to by as God.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's by dint of its presence and awareness, that's what brought everything to existence.
Okay.
That's what I think the creation myth in the Bible is about. It's one way of expressing that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I'll continue with the moral law. Have you ever stolen anything your whole life?
Yes, I used to be a pretty shitty person. I haven't always been as good a person as I am now. I think I was a good person struggling to get out.
Okay.
You know, I struggled with a lot of mental illness and a lot of things like that. And the way I was raised religiously kind of fucked me up too.
Yeah.
It took a lot of times to come to terms with that because I hated God for a long time.
Oh yeah, I can see why
so
you
it took
would.
a long time for me to come back and bring spirituality back into my life.
All right. So what do you call somebody that tell lies? A liar, right?
Right.
All right. Here's what Jesus said about adultery. He says, "You have heard it was said that you should not commit adultery, but I say to you, anyone who looks lustfully at a man or a woman is an adulterer in their heart."
Well, right, because it's the intent that affects your spirit, not the action itself. The action happens, the intent was already there. The action is just the external expression of the intent that was already there.
Absolutely.
That's why going to church and praying on the outside doesn't necessarily mean the goddamn thing.
I love that you said that. Love you said. So I'll give you one more.
Or synagogue or whatever. It doesn't mean anything if it's not actually coming from in here. And most people are just playing.
Right.
I think.
And I'll give you another.
In any religion.
I absolutely agree with you. And I'll give you one more commandment. Have you ever used God's name as a cuss word?
Well, here's where I'm going to get ticky with you on that. I don't think God is his name. I think God's a title. God's not his name. Saying God is his name is like saying my name is dude or my name is man or my name is... It's God's name. In fact, God's given a number of names. One of them is the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, or however it was pronounced. And there's a lot of titles like El Shaddai. The term Elohim was also used.
Right.
So as far as name the Tetragrammaton in vain, there are probably a couple of times in my anger that I did on purpose just for the sake of shocking. But I've said goddamn in conversation with you today. So I guess the answer to your question essentially is yes.
So if you look at the commandments, we've all guilty of breaking all of them, right? Like, or most of them. So based on, it's gonna sound bad, ma'am, but by your own admission, and I'm right here with you, I'm not just judging you. We're liars, we're thieves, we're adulterers, we're blasphemers, right? Okay. And so one day we all gotta die and stand before this righteous God. And I know you say you don't believe it, but let's just say based on what the Bible says, it is true. Okay. And if you stood before him, do you think on the day of judgment you'll be innocent, or would you be guilty if you stood before him based on his standard?